From painting to photography, from beadwork to woodworking, KQAL FM on the campus of Winona State University presents Art Beat. Art Beat highlights the work and accomplishments of local artists from in and around Winona. Support for Art Beat is made possible by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
When you think of Lake Superior, what comes to mind? Maybe its size. With 10% of the Earth's freshwater, it is said to hold 3 quadrillion gallons of water. Maybe you think of power, devouring massive ships within her waves, never giving up her dead. Perhaps you think of its frigid waters, laden with plates of ice, with winds that frost the pine trees like icing on a cake. Vast, rugged, and especially clean and cold. This is the reputation that Lake Superior has had for most of its life. But what if I told you that this description is slowly becoming untrue? That the vast raging waters of Superior are now hosting swimmers instead of ice caps? That the deep blue was becoming the vast green? Due to shorter and shorter winters and excess flooding, algae growth is becoming more and more prevalent, leading to warmer and warmer waters, fewer and fewer fish to catch, and, increasingly, disastrous summer storms. It's a vicious cycle. We live right here in Minnesota. How are we unaware that Lake Superior is said to be one of the fastest warming lakes on Earth? I know I didn't. Someone should really say something. Well, luckily, this is exactly what John Shepard's film, A Sea Change for Superior, hopes to highlight. Let's dive in and get his take on what lies beneath the surface of his film. KQAL 89.5, I'm your host, Series C, on Art Beat. Today I'm talking with John Shepard, producer of the film A Sea Change for Lake Superior, which is showing in the Frozen River Film Festival this weekend. It's great to have you on here, John.
Thank you, Siri. I'm glad to be with you.
All right, thank you for talking with us today. We're just going to get started off. First and foremost, how did you get into filmmaking? Has this always been a dream of yours?
Well, it's been kind of a long path. What would I say about it? I started as a writer and was, done a lot of writing and editing. So really, I would say storytelling has been, kind of a very strong interest of mine throughout my career. And always been interested in visuals and using images to help tell the story. So it really was a combination of that. I like writing, I like conveying ideas, and I've worked a lot as an educator. And being able to work in video or film production, just it's kind of this sweet spot of combining. You're creating an experience for somebody that has emotional power and can, convey a strong message. And, it's very satisfying. It's very challenging. I mean, it's time consuming, and kind of getting all the different elements to work well can take some work, but it's very satisfying. So. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, I don't know if you lived around the area or if you've always had an interest in all things up north, but what was that inciting incident that kind of brought your attention to Lake Superior? Why make a film about it?
Right. Good question. So I'm on the faculty at Hamline University in St. Paul. I work for a center called the Center for Global Environmental Education, and we do a lot of public outreach and education, and also in K-12 schools. And we have been developing. We have actually a whole kind of a public education and stewardship project that we're doing in the Western Lake Superior region. Wow. And so we've been doing a lot of work in the area, creating stories using video and multimedia, delivering the stories through these large touchscreen multimedia kiosks in museums and visitor centers and stuff like that. And as well as we have a web app, and we have a K-12 program that's online for schools. Wow. So we've been developing a lot of stories for as part of this initiative. And as we were developing stories, this takes us back 5 years or so. Wow. We started working with some scientists who were sharing with us, actually it was citizen scientists, Initially, it was a couple who have a charter sailboat service out of Knife River on the north shore of Lake Superior. And they, for years, have been tracking the surface temperature of Lake Superior and sharing their data with some of the scientists, professional scientists in the region that are tracking that kind of thing. And they had really noticed how much the lake has been warming through their temperature gathering. They used to, 20 years ago, they would never think of encouraging people coming out on their sailboat to bring swimsuits in the summer. Now they do it all the time because frequently the surface temperatures can be, up to 70 degrees or so, pretty comfortable on a sunny summer day.
Yeah.
So they were telling us this, and that the lake itself is now through their research and through the scientists they were working with, that the Lake Superior is among the fastest warming lakes in the world. And it's also the largest lake in the world, and it's notoriously cold. And we just thought that was a really interesting idea to explore. Like, why is it getting warm? Why is it warmer than other large lakes in the region and elsewhere? And what does that mean for the lake? What does that mean for the wildlife, the natural systems of the lake? So that was kind of the genesis of this film, was kind of understanding that change that's happening and wanting to explore that.
Awesome response. Thank you so much. The film is obviously all about water and, Lake Superior. That's a lot of water to be working with and around. How were you able to get all of those shots both underneath the water and above the water? Right.
Yeah, it was fun. So we worked with a underwater photographer and videographer, and really very talented. Our whole crew had a lot of skills they brought to the set. So we had, kind of both that underwater perspective of somebody in a wetsuit that's underwater taking pictures. We had several drone videographers above the water. And one of the central parts of the story is we decided to help organize and film a group of long-distance marathon swimmers as they were attempting a world record distance swim in Lake Superior without wetsuits. And this is something they love doing. I mean, these are people that are, don't mind that extreme kind of experience, as they talk about it, full body ice cream headache is kind of the term, or it's kind of controlled hypothermia. I mean, they get they're cold, and but they've learned how to manage that and be able to swim long distances. So we filmed this event where they swam from Split Rock Lighthouse on the North Shore to Duluth, which is about 46 miles nonstop in a relay. So each of the 6 swimmers was in the water for an hour at a time, and then they'd be spelled off by another swimmer. So that was a central part of the story. What was that experience going to be like? And spoiler alert, it turns out that the entire 24 hours as they're swimming, the water temperature never got colder than 60 degrees, which is, kind of really, hit home our fundamental message.
Absolutely.
That's very warm for Lake Superior. You would not expect those conditions to hold over that distance, even in a warm summer time period. So, we just really employed these different videographers. John Thane was our director of photography. He did most of the filming, but, we worked with a number of other folks as well. So that's kind of that. We wanted to bring the lake to life and, make it real for people. And so that underwater perspective was an important part of that.
Well, I think you absolutely succeeded in that. Just watching all of those shots really, really, as you said, drove home the idea. Kind of piggybacking off of the filming aspect, did everything always go as planned, or did you sometimes have to jump to plan B at times?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this long distance swim I was just talking about, we had no idea if that would work. I mean, there were any number of things that could have, caused that to just have to be canceled. And in fact, in the middle of the swim, late in the afternoon, as before they were about to swim through the night, the wind really kicked up, and there was a small craft warning on the lake. So they had we had two boats, one large cabin cruiser, 80 feet long, I think it was, that they were able to sleep in and rest up in. And then there was a sailboat that was going in front of them, because they have to follow a boat, because when you're in the middle of Lake Superior and you're swimming, you have no idea where you are. So you really had to follow somebody. And then we had a kayaker who was kind of a safety kayak, who could actually be fairly close to the swimmers. But then the wind kicked up, and so there was a small craft warning, and so we couldn't have the kayak out there with them. Mm-hmm. And the wind was a tailwind, which was okay for the swimmers, but the sailboat, which did not have its sails up, it was just running on its engine, was getting pushed forward so much by the wind that it was beginning to move too far ahead of them, and so we almost had to cancel it midway. So that, as it turned out, they were able to throw a bunch of stuff overboard to drag behind the boat to make it slow down, and that worked well enough for them to be able to continue. So anyway, the swim worked out, but we had to prepare the whole film, with the idea that it might have just totally been canceled, or a storm could have come up, or any number of things. So we did have a whole plan B of how we were going to edit the story if that project didn't work. So when you're doing a documentary like this and you're working in an environment like Lake Superior, where there are just so many unpredictables and unknowns, you definitely need to kind of have backup plans.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be so flexible with these things, and that's super admirable. I totally get that. Now, I understand you're really involved with the environment. You're an assistant director and professor for the Center of Global Environmental Education at Hamline. So, you have quite a background in many things to do with the environment. Where did this love and just interest or concern for the environment come from?
Well, for me, I grew up in the Twin Cities, and as a kid, I grew up in a family. We did a lot of stuff outdoors, a lot of canoe trips with my parents and in our neighborhood when I was little, and that I just loved that stuff. And then as I got older in high school and college, I worked up in the Boundary Waters for a number of years as a wilderness guide, and then eventually, as a program director with an environmental education center up there, a YMCA program. And, so that just, kind of love of the outdoors and the natural world has just, kind of been part of my life experience in an important way. And so, it's kind of a natural, storytelling about the natural world grew out of that for me, as well as, and my training is actually in cultural anthropology. So I've always been really interested in how people, particularly people in different cultures, interact with the natural world, what kind of relationships different cultures have with the natural world, and that has really also driven a lot of our storytelling. We're working very closely with the Ojibwe bands in the Lake Superior region on a number of projects, and included quite a bit of input and involvement, particularly with the Fond du Lac band, which is they're based near Cloquet, Minnesota. So, that cultural dimension is also something that, I've always been very interested in, and kind of that combined with just kind of a love of nature and being out of doors. And so, filming a documentary like this is just, you're outdoors, you're filming, and kind of involved in that creative process in places that are inspiring and interesting to be in. So it all fits together in that way for me.
Yeah, I mean, working with people from so many different walks of lives and cultures, educational backgrounds. I mean, going into this film, I'm sure you knew a lot, just working with the environment so often with all the programs you do, but what were you able to get out of this experience yourself?
Well, for sure, a really deep appreciation for a much deeper appreciation for Lake Superior. We interviewed 9 different scientists, spent time on a research vessel that the Environmental Protection Agency uses in the Great Lakes. And, through those relationships and spending time with those folks, the complexities of the lake itself, how its currents operate, how different, fish species and other creatures, have adapted to live in this, fairly harsh environment. It's actually, it's called an oligotrophic lake, meaning it's so cold that there's not a lot of nutrients there. So, it's not, life is not super abundant in Lake Superior. And so just fascinating to learn all that and then learn about what happens as those conditions change and as the lake warms up. And then, part of this story also is just, the lake is warming up because our climate is warming up. And the kind of the cause of the warming has to do with the fact that winters are less severe than they have been historically. There's less ice cover on the lake. So if you have extensive periods during the winter where there's no ice cover, all the sunshine during the winter just gets absorbed into the water, and so it's, instead of being reflected up into the sky if it were covered with ice and snow. So it's really the lack of ice in the winter that is driving the warming of the lake more than anything else. So it's just kind of getting that appreciation of how some of those dynamics work, and then the severe storms that have been happening, 3 either 500-year or 1,000-year storms within a 6-year period have occurred in Duluth and along the south shore of Lake Superior, which is, again, unprecedented. Absolutely. And those impacts on some of those communities that people will probably remember. 2012, Duluth got hit with a 500-year flood and storm, and just ripped up the streets. There was so much water flowing through the city and flooded animals out of the zoo. The animals are swimming around outside the zoo. And then 2 more big storms along the south shore within the next few years. So, all these different elements that, are life systems of a place like Lake Superior and the surrounding areas on land. It's just fascinating to learn about, for me, how all those parts of the environment interact, and then how we interact with them through our actions. So I would say that was kind of a big takeaway for me, is just deepening that appreciation.
Absolutely. What would you like anyone who views your film to take away for themselves?
Well, some of what I feel like I got out of the experience of making the film, I would hope people would, get some of that as well. Sort of, the way we decided to organize the story is in 3 sections. And the first section is called Legacy. So really looking at, well, what is the legacy of Lake Superior? What makes it extraordinary? What do people think about it? What do people love about it? And so we spent time with a commercial fisherman who for 30 years has been going out in a 18-foot open, like a skiff, basically, like a big rowboat, fishing for herring, and using technology, the boat and, these underwater nets that he sets up. It's pretty much the same thing that people were using 150 years ago. He has an outboard motor. That's about the only difference. And it's very dangerous. I mean, people can get swept off into the open lake if a storm comes up, and and he's out there until the lake freezes over, and as soon as it thaws in the spring, he's out there again. So the conditions can be really cold. So that's part of the heritage of the lake, the importance of the lake, and to the Ojibwe community and ways that they have understood its power. We work with 2 different artists who have done some incredible creative work in depicting mythological creatures that in Ojibwe culture are associated with Lake Superior. So that legacy part is a very big part. The fact that there are underwater shipwrecks. There's over 500 ships, 600 ships that have been lost in Lake Superior. So we worked with underwater divers who have explored those, and so that's the legacy piece. The second section of the program is called Sea Change, and that's really looking at these most recent changes that are occurring because of our changing climate. And then the final section is called Stewardship. So, what can people do if they're concerned about the fate of the lake and the fact that our climate is warming? And we work with young people a lot. We profiled an environmental education program that's happening in schools up and down the North Shore of Lake Superior, where students are learning about the lake, and they develop radio. Actually, they develop radio public service announcements about impacts of climate change on Lake Superior, and this broadcast on community radio stations in the region. So that was really fun. I mean, they're just like full of enthusiasm and, concerned about these issues, but taking action. And so, it was both inspiring to witness that and to share that story. So I guess my hope would be people will kind of get some of all of that. They'll appreciate the lake more, because it is truly a world-class, extraordinary natural resource in our part of the world. Hoping that people will understand some of the things that are happening to the lake and what the repercussions are, and then what can people do? What are ways people can get involved? So that would be my hope.
Awesome, absolutely. Now, to end off, if you would, where can people find this film or maybe learn more about your next upcoming projects?
Yeah, appreciate you asking that. So, we have the film actually is available online on our website, along with we had a Emmy Award, and the Sea Change for Superior, and the full title is A Sea Change for Superior: The Warming of the World's Largest Lake. It's kind of a mouthful, but it kind of captures the idea behind it.
Right.
It's been in a number of festivals. It was nominated for a regional Emmy Award. The film we did the year previous looked at the wonders of the night sky and indigenous interpretations of the sky, looking at the impact of light pollution, and that's a whole nother topic. And that film, as well as other ones we've done, are available on our website. And that website is cgee.hamline, HAMLINE.edu. So I can, Siri, I can send you that link if you're able to post this maybe with your, as part of this broadcast.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for talking with us, and to all of our listeners today. We certainly appreciate having you on, and thank you for your time and, your insight. We really appreciate your filmmaking and what you're doing out there. It's really affecting so many people.
Well, thank you so much. It's been my pleasure, and hope people enjoy the film. Of course, they can see it. I guess this broadcast will go out after it's being screened with the Frozen River Festival, but be able to find it online. So we look forward to seeing more people get involved. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
The truth about Lake Superior is chilling, isn't it? Beyond that, it's a testament to why we should always seek to learn more. Without that ambition, John may have never made this film, or may not have continued to impact viewers like you and me. If you've been moved to keep seeking what lies beyond, then I encourage you to view John Shepard's film online at cgee.hamline.edu, at their Center for Global Environmental Education. That is cgee.hamline.edu, Center for Global Environmental Education. I highly, highly encourage you to give it a watch. There just might be a sea change within yourself because of it. For more conversations on art, tune into Artbeat Tuesdays at 12:30 right here on 89.5 KQAL. For links to podcasts of Artbeat and other KQAL original programming, go to kqal.org. That's all from me, your host, Siri C.
Artbeat is written and produced by KQAL-FM on the campus of Winona State University. Visit us on the web at kqal.org.